Anyways, never mind. All right, so hey, so I was invited here by Adrian. I am her guest speaker, I guess, today in thrivingchildcare.com, Daycare Q&A Day. So Adrian's already given me a nice introduction, so there's no need for me to go through that again. But I'll just quickly say, obviously, my name is Dee Scott, and hey, from Maryland. That's a place I've never been to the East Coast, and I've always wanted to go to the East Coast. But I am the founder and CEO of the Play Suite. My Facebook group here on Facebook is a Childcare Business Launch. And my main thing is to help people that want to start a childcare program launch, but launch in a successful way. And then those that have already started, but they find themselves overwhelmed and almost hating their business, I help them to fall back in love with their business by creating a strong vision, mission, and creating those systems to support their vision. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. So I think you guys know how this works. If you have any questions, just drop it in the comments. I'm going to be reading questions from my phone just to make sure I don't, oh shoot, why did I do that? To make sure I don't miss them. Facebook has a whole new interface and it makes it so difficult. Okay. So I'm going to start this off by talking about how to start a childcare center. I see this question a lot posted in groups, and then I also get these questions a lot in the DMs, in my personal DMs. So I would love to talk about this, and if you guys have any questions surrounding how to start a childcare center, please drop your questions in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer. Or any other questions regarding, running your own family childcare program. Adrian and I, we were talking the other day, and we did not realize that a lot of providers don't have the awareness that when you have your in-home program, it doesn't have to be the typical, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., daycare or childcare type program. There's a lot of flexibility, and you're only limited really by your own imagination and by the needs and the wants of the parents in your community. So I also want to, touch on that a little bit today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because I don't see any questions. Dang it. I don't see any questions right now. But let me, sorry. I don't see any questions right now. Let me turn the volume off. I don't see any questions right now. Oh. This is frustrating. Okay, yeah, so far I just see Kitty Cove Childcare from Maryland. Thank you for joining us, Kitty Cove. All right, so for those of you that have dreamt about starting a childcare center, the process isn't that complicated, and I'll say that, I'll preface that by saying, depending on the city you live in, honestly, the hoops that you have to jump through aren't necessarily from licensing. It is from your city. It's from the building and planning department, and then obviously it's going to come from your fire department, because licensing is going to wait until all these organizations give you the green light, and then they're going to do their investigation or their tour of your facility to make sure the facility is safe and you meet all the requirements, to open up a center. So first I want to say this. One of the questions that I get a lot is, what is the requirements to be a director? Or, I'm going to wait until I qualify to be the director of my program, and things around that. And here's what I have to say about that. Depending on the state, you want to go to your licensing regulations. And that's one thing you want to be clear about, the qualifications for a director. Some states is very minimal. Other states you need a bachelor's degree plus a few years of experience. So, but here's what I have to say about that. In most states, and I'll just speak for California. In California, you having your own in-home childcare program unfortunately doesn't count as experience. Because by definition of licensing in California, experience counts as when you're under the supervision of like a director or an executive director or something like that. So if you're supervising yourself, that doesn't count. Now, if you're a part of like, I think it's, and this is California terms I'm speaking of, an organization like FCCHEN, people pronounce it fetching. You are supervised by that organization. In that case, your experience will count, but it has to be documented by the organization in order for it to count. But here's what I want to say about that. Even if you don't qualify to be the director and everything else is a go for you, do not hesitate. I think we get, and it's not our fault, I think we get so hung up on titles that we look for that top dog title, which is typically the director. But the thing is, you are the owner, and no one can take away the sovereignty, I guess, of that title, of who you are to your business. So, and I know the perception is that, well, if I hire a director, I won't be in control of my own program, or she'll be the boss, she'll call the shots, or he'll call the shots. That is absolutely not true. The reason why licensing states that there needs to be a director is because a lot of childcare owners are started by investors or someone that's just funding the program. So they just want to make sure the person that's running the program or that's in charge of the program has the experience to do so. But the owner who may not have, the required experience in regards to licensing doesn't mean that you're less qualified to operate your own program. So you can hire a director, and that director can spend, let's say, half of her time in the classroom and half of her time out of the classroom. You can start with a very inexperienced director, and then you guys can kind of grow together in running the program. But I think in situations like this, I don't think the potential owner is really looking at this from a positive perspective, because running a childcare program is tough. It's tough. It requires you to have the ability to relate to people, to interact with people, and to manage people. And I hate that term, managing people. When you're in that position, it's all about kids, but you will spend most of your time dealing with adults, teachers and parents. So if you can have someone else that has that responsibility, it takes so much pressure off of you, and you can see this person more like a partner. Now, I don't mean a partner in business, like they own partnership, but they will definitely kind of be the eyes in your ears, and they might be able to see your blind spots that you don't realize. So it could be a great relationship. So to sum that up, just because you don't qualify to be the director of your program and you have everything else ready to go, don't let it stop you. You're still in control of your program. And if you must give yourself a title, give yourself a title of executive director. Because in most states, that title isn't even in licensing regulations. So you can give yourself that title. And then you would just function in your program according to licensing. So say for instance, you open up your center, you don't qualify as a director, but you also don't qualify as a teacher because you don't have your units, and you may not have certain years of experience. The only thing that means is that you can't go in a classroom and take over a classroom unsupervised, basically by yourself, because you don't have those qualifications to do so. So that would be the only thing where you're limited. But this is your program. Run your program. You set it. You design your program the way you want to design your program. So don't get hung up on titles. Here in Maryland, you can own and direct, which is tough because I'd rather be with the kids all day. See, okay, that is a very good point. You need to really know where your strengths are, and you need to know where your passion is. Because if your passion is with the children, then be with the children. And it will be very beneficial for you then to have someone, even if it's an assistant director, have someone that can man the lobby and the front office. Because it's going to be hard for you to be with the children, to be really present with the children, and you're running back and forth, answering phones, doing tours, handling parent concerns, doing billing, paperwork for enrollment, all the stuff. You can hire someone to do that while you still be focused on your love and your passion, which is working directly with children. See, in childcare, I don't believe there's a hierarchy. You often hear, I would often hear, like say for instance, there's a preschool teacher, a teacher of 3-year-olds that has been the 3-year-old teacher for the last, let's say, 5 years. Sometimes you'll hear people ask this person, oh, don't you want to move up? Don't you have dreams of, moving up and becoming a director? To that teacher, that may not be what moving up looks like, because that's a whole different world when you become a director. So I don't think one position is beneath the other. Like the hierarchy is, let's say, executive director, then there's the director, then the assistant manager. You might have an office manager in between that. So let's just say the admin team, and then you have your lead teachers, and then your teachers, and your assistant teachers, and your floaters, and things like that. One position, in my opinion, is not higher than the other. In situations like this, like in our niche, I believe in a flat organizational chart. Now, the only tier might be the owner and maybe, some of the admin team, but pretty much is flat because every single position is important and every single position has value. And you can grow or move up in a lateral way, instead of, an up and down way. So for instance, let's say that teacher that has been, working in preschool for 5 years, maybe for her, an advancement would be that she starts coaching other preschool teachers, or she could be a parent coach. So she's taking what she knows and loves, and she's just expanding it and applying it in different areas. So I don't even know how we got off on that. Kitty Cove Childcare, you made me do that. But that's a good point, though. I'm so glad you said that, because just because you own a childcare program doesn't mean you can't be with the children. And if that's where your love is, you need to set your program up to support you in doing what you really want to do. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Let me see if there's any other questions. All right. So another thing in starting a childcare program, you want to make sure that it's the building that you find is properly zoned. I have heard so many stories that someone finds a building and they get everything set up, only to find that zoning prohibits that childcare center being in that location. Like for instance, in many cities, a childcare program or even a school can't be within a certain mile radius of like a cannabis shop or a liquor store, or something like that. So definitely check your zoning. If you find a building you love, check your zoning. And there's a lot of best practices when it comes to finding that perfect location. because oftentimes we might drive around and we just happen to see a vacant building and we just go for it. But, and sorry if I feel like I'm all over the place, but you really should do your research. When you find a building, you want to do your research. You want to know the traffic patterns. Is it off the beaten path? Is it in the mainstream of traffic? You know, how easy will it be for parents to get in and out of the parking lot, you know, so they can get to work on time? And those might be minor things to look at. But when you're looking at a building, I want you to think about the people that are going to occupy that space. All right. So for the most of the day, so the main people that are going to occupy that space for the good portion of the day are going to be the kids, you know, the children that you take care of, the teachers, no matter what their position is, and obviously you know, if you plan on being there. Secondary, you know, is the parents, because the parents, on an average week, parents are probably going to spend maybe 5 hours, you know, drop off and pick up. And 5 hours might be a little extreme, because usually they're there all of 10 minutes, if that, for morning drop off and pick up. And it depends on the age of their child, and you know, and things like that. So you want to think about that. So first of all, think about the children. You know, if you were a child, or think back to your own childhood, what type of space would be pleasing to you? Best practice is childcare centers. Okay, first of all, sorry, I'm all over the place. If we haven't learned anything from the pandemic, what we have learned is that people crammed in enclosed spaces is not healthy. So when you're looking for a childcare program, make sure you maximize the space. You want a large space. And that space also needs to have windows that open and a door to the outside, so that you can let fresh air in. Even in the wintertime, I mean, fresh air is so important, you guys. So classrooms should have windows. Hopefully the windows are going to be at eye level of the children. Ideally, it should have a door leading directly to the child's playground, and it should have bathrooms in the classroom, especially for children that are going through the potty training stage. If you go to your licensing regulations and maybe type in the search bar most common violations, one of those violations is going to be, the most common one is supervision, especially when the bathroom is outside of the classroom. Because I'm not going to say teachers get lazy, but teachers will find a way to make their jobs easier. So if you've taken the whole group to the bathroom and everyone goes, and you come back and 10 minutes later, you know, Teresa needs to now go to the bathroom, it might be easier for that teacher to say, you know what, the bathroom is just right down the hall. I'm going to stand by the door and watch her go to the bathroom and make sure she comes back okay. And the teacher might be saying, well, that's good enough. I can still see what's happening. But now the child is out of the classroom, which is the area where the teacher is and is supervising. So now that child is unattended. She's not supervised. That's a write-up. So long story short, try to have bathrooms in the classrooms as well as sinks. So I'm not going to go into all that, but there are best practices when it comes to finding that ideal location, and also the physical layout of the building. So what's another question when it comes to starting a child care program? Okay, so another thing you want to do, especially if you pretty much feel like you have the funding and you're ready to start, you want to do a cash flow projection. And you want to do it for a full 12 months. So you want to do the startup and then 12 months after that. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to be clear about how much money you'll need. And if you do this cash flow projection realistically, it will show you times where you might run out of money. So in those periods when you see that you're running out of money, those are the times when you need to say, before it happens, you need to say, okay, obviously we're going to need a heavier cash injection to help cover these times. Now, obviously this is a projection and it doesn't mean that's going to happen, but you want to have an overview of how it could go based on how much money you start out with, the capacity in your classrooms, how you see enrollment happening. Now, there is a lot of talk about, childcare deserts, and there's such a need for childcare, but you also need to look at the landscape and the trends that are happening. Like, for instance, in California, there is a need for childcare. In some areas, there really isn't. But for the areas where there is a clear need for childcare, there is also a new thing happening, and that is called free universal preschool, or universal TK, which is transitional kindergarten, which took the place of pre-K. That's being rolled out heavily. And what a lot of centers and even in-home providers are finding out is that while there is a need, there's not so much a need for those 3 and 4-year-olds. So now, they've opened their program trying to fulfill that need, only to realize, well, that need is already being filled, especially because it's free. And parents, childcare, a parent can say childcare is expensive, because it is. It doesn't mean there's no value there, but parents are looking for a relief. And right now, if they can get free childcare through universal TK or universal preschool, you can't blame a parent for taking it. But what you can do is blame your local government and the powers at play for not understanding our niche. And maybe it's not even their fault that they don't understand it, but we need to speak up more, and that's going on a tangent, so I'm going to move on from that. I'm just checking comments here. Hello, Connie Perkins, hello. All right, so yes, you definitely want to do a cash flow projection, and here's my tip. When it comes to revenue or income coming in, which is basically your tuition, you want to be extremely conservative. So let's say you open up in September. And let's say your capacity is 100 kids, all right? So do not write down in September that you're going to have 50 children enrolled. That's nice, and it could very well happen, but you don't want to plan your money around that. You want to be extremely conservative, especially for those first 3-4 months. Extremely conservative. So a conservative number starting out, say you open in September, which is a prime time to open, because a lot of parents are looking for childcare, preschools. They've decided to change from one program to another. So August, September is kind of like our Christmas, like Christmas for the retail industry. That's our Christmas. So you can count on higher than average enrollment, especially being a new program. Parents love new, so especially if they're not happy with their own program. So let's say your capacity is 100, and you're opening up 1st of September. So it's not unrealistic to say by September, and let's say you have an infant program, a preschool program, and a before and after school program. So it's not unrealistic to say maybe your infant program for the month of September will start out with 5 kids. Your preschool program may start out with 10, and your school age program, let's just say 8, right? But to say you're going to be almost full by September and October, it could happen. But like I say, you don't want to gamble your money on that, because see, here's what happens. If you're too liberal or too enthusiastic about revenue coming in, and then when you put it to real life and it doesn't pan out, you're running out of money real quick, because it's not meeting your budget. But if you were to go in and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be extremely conservative about my enrollment and my revenue, and and you plan for that, meaning that you have that cash up front to cover your expenses, because you still have to pay teachers, employee taxes, your lease, utilities, all that stuff. You still have to pay it, regardless if you have 0 kids or if you're to capacity. And that way, it's better to have underestimated than to have overestimated, and then you run out of money, and then you have no choice but to close your doors, 3 or 4 months down the line because you ran out of money. So be extremely conservative about your revenue or your enrollments coming in, and you want to be extremely liberal about your expenses, especially when it comes to staffing. We tend to under budget our staff expense. And you might be saying, well, I am just going to work every day, all day. You can do that, and most of us do starting out. But I do want you to account for times where you might get sick, or if you have children where they might need you, or any type of an emergency that comes up. And then just for your own self-care, you need to build in some space where you're not working all day. So you're going to need someone to be in charge of the program while you're not there. Even if you may not need them, you still want that key person there. And that key person can be a lead teacher that's primarily in the classroom. So don't schedule your staffing so thin that if someone is absent, everything falls apart. Because you do need to account for teachers getting sick, teachers never coming back to work again, teachers that need to go home early, or you needing to actually, terminate a teacher. We need to take that into, to factor that in, because our margins are already so low, and we tend to, and because we're trying to, cut costs, we tend to have a very lean staff. And in a childcare program or a preschool or a daycare, whatever you want to call it, this niche is not a niche to have a lean staff, because our programs rely on, licensing tells us we have to keep certain ratios, and there's no excuse. If licensing comes and we're out of ratio, there's nothing you can say that's going to make them not cite you. And if it happens over again, they can easily put you on and revoke your license. So you don't want to take that risk. Let me check for more questions. I don't see any more questions. Okay. Yeah, so you don't want to take that risk. So definitely do your cash flow projection. So funding. Let's talk about funding. This is probably one of the most popular questions is, I want to start a childcare program, but I don't have the money. Can you help me, or can you guide me to where I can find grants that can help fund me, or how to get a loan, or whatever the case may be? Help me find the money so I can start my program. All right, so let's talk about grants first. Grants are lovely, and in times of the pandemic, most states saw grants coming out. They were falling out of the sky. California is an exception. But anyways, it was easy for you to grab a grant to open up a childcare program. But for the most part, grants are, it is free money, but for the most part, when someone is giving you money to open up a center, they're going to want to see that you have skin in the game, meaning that you need to bring your own money too, because they don't want to be the one taking all the risk. They want to see that you've put money forth to help build, grow, and sustain your program. So you can't, it's going to be a rare instance where you're going to be funded 100% by a grant. So you do have to have some money available to help start your center. All right. Now, when it comes to a loan, you still need to have some money. Loans rarely cover 100%. Usually they cover maybe 80%, which means that you have to come out of pocket 20%. And then with loans, there's credit requirements. You'll have to have collateral, because what they want to know is if this doesn't work out, because nothing is guaranteed. Any business is a risk. So they want to know if this does not work out, how are you going to pay me back my money? And that's what they want to know. That's probably one of the most pressing questions a loan institution will have of you. How are you going to pay us back? And if this business fails, how are you going to assure us that you're still going to be able to pay us back? Because they want their money back. That's how banks make money. They loan money. We pay it back with interest. That's one of the ways that they make their money. So, I know a lot of people say, oh my gosh, never get a loan. And if you do not put up collateral. But here's what I have to say about that. Usually when you're going for a loan, you're convincing that loan institution that you're going to succeed. You're not going to fail. This is going to be a success because you have what it takes, and you've laid out your business plan so clearly. You've covered everything. This is a win-win, and they would be crazy not to give you their money. If a person is so sure about that, then to me, to put up collateral is a no-brainer. If you're that confident that it's going to work, then putting up collateral, basically putting your money where your mouth is, should be a no-brainer. But when we take a step back and we think, oh wow, wait a minute, if I put my house up on collateral, what if it doesn't work out? So now we start thinking the same way that loan institutions think. Okay, there's a possibility that this may not work. How are you going to pay us back? So, that's something to think about. And just because your business goes under doesn't mean the bank is going to call in the loan and go after your collateral or your assets. As long as you're still able to make those payments, that's going to make them happy. So you need to just make sure that if you do get a loan, you need to address the risk. If this doesn't work, how am I going to be able to make these loan payments of whatever amount it is? Will I have to get a second job? Will we have to sell our house and cash out the equity and pay the loan back? What's the plan? And just be clear about that. But don't be afraid of loans. You just want to really understand what's happening, and you need to address the risk so that you can mitigate that risk. And so that you can be prepared just in case it happens. Because starting any business, even businesses that are in high demand, there is a risk that it may not work out. Okay, that's just the reality. Starting a business is risky. It's risky business. All right. So I don't see any other questions about anything. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I don't see anything. So, and another thing I want to say about funding is that you can self-fund your program. Hey, Elisa, you can self-fund your program. If you have a family daycare right now, there's cases where a person was able to raise half the money they needed by selling slots in a program that hadn't even broke ground yet. Those things can happen. They're not rare. I think the only reason why they're rare is because not enough people use that strategy. But the one thing you need to do, and this is what I did when I started my own business, I was telling everybody what I wanted to do. It didn't matter if there was any way that I could squeeze in my conversation of my dream to open up a center, I was doing it. I did it in the grocery store lines. I did it in family events, at my church, even the places that I worked as a teacher and then eventually as a director. The owners, they knew what I wanted to do. They weren't scared or felt intimidated or like, oh my gosh, competition is coming. Because I was very honest and forthcoming, they gave me a lot of insight and advice that I really appreciated. And then on the flip side, I learned a lot just by, working with them and helping them, and things like that. So tell everybody, because you never know, the person that you're talking to might have the keys to your financing. Tell everyone. Have a compelling story. Create a vision board of what this organization that you're trying to build is going to look like. Start doing fundraisers, and you can start small. You don't. So let's say you have to raise. I don't want to say a big number. Let's say you just need $200,000 to start your program. $200,000. That sounds very overwhelming, but start small. You know how some people, when they're doing fundraising campaigns, they have like this thermostat looking thing, and at the top is their final number, and then at the bottom is 0. Create one of those for yourself. Open up a business account or a separate account, so whatever money you raise for your program, it goes into that account and it is not touched. So like I said, start small. Yard sales. Put why this yard sale is happening. Get people excited about your program coming. And like I said, have a compelling purpose or vision of what you're trying to start. Don't just say, "Oh, I just want to start a childcare program." That doesn't move anyone. It's like, yay, good for you. But let's say you're a Montessorian and you want to start a true AMI Montessori program. You're going to speak the language. You're going to talk about the importance and the value of a Montessori program to whether it's infants or preschool or elementary school age, or I think they call it adolescents. You're going to be talking about that. You can give workshops about the importance of the Montessori method. Talk about Marie Montessori herself. Give examples of other schools that have already been established that have a track record of their children succeeding and doing well, and not just in school but in life. And you can charge for parent trainings. You can have a program where you'll go into a family's home and you'll create a Montessori environment for their children. You can lend your services to homeschool families that want to have a Montessori approach to their homeschooling. I mean, really, you're only limited by your own limitations. Did I say that right? You're only limited by your own imagination. So it's going to take work, and it's going to take time, because right now, when you don't have the money, you use the time that you have to bring in that money. So just start thinking out of the box and do what you already know. So if a Montessori program is you want, and you're consider yourself to be a Montessorian, there's a lot there that you can do. If you're play-based, if you're like a true play-based like I am, you can do that as well. When you do a yard sale, think of the name that you want your program to be, and the program could be for the future building of whatever the name of your program is. And just start talking about it. I mean, get on social media, you guys. You can spread your word around the world on social media. So get on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, X. Is X the new Twitter now? Threads, YouTube, whatever the case may be. Start talking about it. If this is really a dream of yours, and if it is a strong passion of yours to do this, be clear on why you're doing it. Be clear on who is going to benefit and why, and start talking about it. You should be busting at the seams to talk about this because you can't just shut up. And that's how I was. I could not shut up about it until I got the funding, almost $100,000. So that's what I have to say about funding. You can still look for grants, and things like that, but do your work too. Start that momentum going. And I promise you, when you get that going and you start putting effort in raising the money for your program, it's going to come. But you can't just sit around dreaming and without action. You can't do that because it's not going to happen. I guess it could, but it's not going to happen. I've seen people say, once a week I'm just going to play the lottery and see. And sometimes I might win $50 here, $100 there, $2 here. It's still money, and you put it in your account that's reserved only for your center. And before you know it, that dollar amount is going to grow. In the beginning, it's going to feel frustrating because if you're trying to get to $200,000 and by the end of the year, you've only raised $100, that seems frustrating. But you have to think about this. I raised $100. Now we're going to double it. And it does, the money, your efforts will multiply over time. I believe there's a law about that, like a natural law about, I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is, and I need to find it. Okay, so let me check the comments. Great tips. Thanks, Elisa. Okay, is there a software program that you recommend for a center? Sandbox will be, oh really? Interesting. Well, I say you need to find the program that works for you and that's going to be easy for you to use. There's people that are very tech savvy that love certain programs over a person that is kind of tech adverse and they need something extremely simple. For me, I used Childcare. When I worked in other centers, they used, I can't even remember the names of them now, but they used different ones, and they were fine. But because I can get very overwhelmed by a lot of information coming at me, it was very difficult for me to run those programs. Childcare, at the time, it had a very easy user interface. I could pull up reports. There was all kinds of things that I could do. And then with most of these software programs, there are some customizations that you can do. You would just need to get an IT person to come in and create or to customize your program. So at least I'll say go ahead and Google childcare software management programs and ask for a demo. And then just start playing around with it. And then whatever you feel that is ease of use for you, and then something that you can also train someone else how to use, that's the program I would use. So yeah, it really all depends on the person using it. But there's a lot of great programs out there. But for me, I did use Childcare for my center. For my family daycare, I did use Brightwell, and then I switched to Hi Mama in my family daycare. All right, let's see what else. All right, I don't see any other questions. So even after this is over, because I know some of you will be watching the replay, please drop your questions because I will be happy to come back and answer. Or Adrienne can let me know, and then obviously, I can come back and answer. Okay, so before I go, I do want to talk about one other thing. For those that have a in-home family childcare, if you find yourself getting tired or feeling like you don't want to do this anymore, it could be that you just don't want the program that you have. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to do the traditional daycare program, which is designed for working families. So you have extended hours to meet their working hour needs, or if they're going to school. You can have a specialized program. And nowadays, especially here in California, and I know it's happening in other states, with free preschool and free TK programs, the more specialized or boutique that you are, the greater chance that you have in attracting families of preschoolers to a program that they would be willing to pay for over the free program. See, the thing that's happening, okay, school districts around the U.S. are losing students. The enrollment is dropping. And it could be a period where the birth rate dropped and now it's just really starting to show itself. But a lot of it is that parents are fed up with the public school system. There's a lot of politics around it too. But for the most part, parents are just fed up. They want something different and better for their kids. And they want something that is more suitable for a lifestyle school-work balance. So parents are paying for private schools, sending their kids to charter schools, and even homeschooling their kids and hiring a teacher to teach their kids. So right now, parents are rushing to enroll their children in these free preschool and TK programs. But I do feel like over time that's going to phase out too, because a lot of them are only half day and a lot of parents are working and it's kind of hard. But enough of that. So you can actually start in your home childcare program. You can have a traditional preschool program. And then I know, providers say, well, what qualifies me to be a preschool teacher? I'm going to say this. You don't necessarily need any special education. I do think you should have a good, solid knowledge of best practices. You want to make sure it's not just something you randomly thought up and now you're going to experiment this program on kids. There's a lot of best practices out there. You want to decide, what is your philosophy and approach going to be? Like I said, are you a Montessorian? Do you want to have a Montessori program, or maybe Montessori inspired, maybe Reggio inspired, more of a fundamentalist program? Maybe you have a strong Christian belief and you want to have a Christian-based program. Waldorf. I mean, there's all kinds of programs that you can start. But the key is, whatever you start, you want to make sure that parents are understanding what you're doing, so that, because there's a saying that goes, a confused buyer will never buy, or a confused person will never buy. So you want to make sure it's clear. Now, there might need to be a level of education that happens, like explaining to your program why you're doing it this way, what is the benefit to their child, and maybe even to their family as a whole. But I think Adrienne is going to talk about this sometime in the next few weeks. She ran across a program up in the Bay Area where her program is half day. It's a beautiful, quaint little program. And she's only open 9 months out of the year as well. And she's full. And she has, I think, 3 or 4 staff working for her. And she's profitable. I know of a person, she took a more homeschool approach. Her program is called the Garden School. And her program is for parents that want to homeschool, but they can't because they're working, or because they feel like they don't have what it takes. So her program is more of a homeschool program, but it's in her home. And she is high in demand. She has a wait list. And there's nothing special about her environment, but there are a certain group of parents that are looking for that. So if you want a half-day program, you can't just say, oh, we have a half-day program. You need to talk about the benefits of your program. Like, what makes your program special and how is it different from anyone else's program? And you need to be clear about that and to be able to explain it. And also, aesthetics, to me, they do matter. So if a person is driving by your house and you have this half-day program, you might want to put in some extra effort by dressing up the front of your house. And that could be some potted plants, some whimsical, decoration around. Make sure it's clean. There's not much you can do about your neighbors, but your area, the plot of land you're responsible for, make sure it's clean and inviting, and not just for adults, but for kids too. Like having like child size, like lounge chairs and, and things like that. A bucket of toys on your porch. Just something that says children belong here, and this is a half-day enrichment program. I know of a person that did the half-day. It was half-day, but she was open from, I want to say 8 to, I think the latest time was like 5 o'clock. She had a morning program and she had an afternoon program. And then Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays were her her preschoolers. And they could choose morning or afternoon. Tuesdays and Thursdays were for her toddlers, like for 18 months to 3 years old. Those days were reserved for her toddlers. So she was open full time, but her actual program was half day and not even 5 days a week. If you're a preschool, it's 3 days a week. If you had a toddler, it was 2 days a week. So, and I'll say it again, you're only limited by your own imagination. So I hope this was helpful. I hope I gave you something to think about. If you wanted to open up your childcare program, or maybe now you see a different way you can actually run your in-home program, because you can have a very profitable in-home program. There are times where your in-home program might be more profitable than your childcare program, than a childcare center. And I'm talking net profits. I don't mean gross profits. I mean net profits. So just think about what you want to do. Don't think one is better than the other, or one is more reputable than the other, or one gets more respect than the other, because that's really all up to the parent and how the parent sees you and values you. Because the truth is, you can have a child care center. You're still going to have parents that don't want to pay. You're still going to have parents that complain left and right. All of that happens. You're still going to have parents that disrespect you and your staff, or calling them babysitters. That happens. It still happens. I think it's just the quality and the mindset of that parent. The setting itself doesn't matter. So that's all for me today. It's been a pleasure being here. I hope I gave you guys a lot of value and something to think about. Thank you for tuning in, giving up part of your day to sit here and listen to me. I hope you guys are having a great time with the kids, and I hope everything is going well in your program, and that you're not impacted by some of the trends that are happening. And if you are impacted, it's time to kind of take a step back and do a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to see how maybe you can pivot. And then I encourage all of you guys to make an appointment with Adrienne. I mean, she offers coaching, and I'm a coach as well, and I've learned a lot from her and how she conducts her programs. So have a talk with her and see if it's a good fit, because really, if you are in that position where you're losing enrollment because of free preschools that are out now, and unfortunately we're not a part of that mixed delivery system, have a conversation with her, because there's lots of opportunities, and sometimes it's hard to see those opportunities when we're stressed, and when, especially about money, when we're thinking about how are we going to pay the bills, and and things like that. So it helps to talk to someone that has been there and done that, and that has a more neutral and objective view of the situation. And she can help you brainstorm and come up with other ways that you can make money still doing what you love. So I would definitely DM her. I'm not sure how to contact her. I guess DM her, or even email her, and just say, hey, can I need a consultation to see how you might be able to help me. All right, I shall talk to you guys later. Have a wonderful day, and once again, thank you for tuning in.